La Unión Americana de Libertades Civiles, ACLU, es el perro guardián de la libertad, trabajando diariamente en las cortes, las legislaturas y las comunidades para defender y preservar los derechos individuales y las libertades garantizadas a todo el pueblo en el país por la Constitución y las leyes de los Estados Unidos. ACLU nunca asume posiciones electorales, liberales o conservadoras, ni republicanas, ni demócratas, ni de izquierda ni de derecha. La mayoría de sus clientes son personas comunes y corrientes que sufrieron alguna injusticia y decidieron contrarrestarla. Platicamos con Daniela Velazquez, la directora de comunicaciones de San Luis, Missouri. Ella es una pieza fundamental para la comunidad hispana de la región. Where you come from?
San Luis.
Hey, but your family is from Puerto Rico.
Yo soy una missouriqueña. So I'm the director of communications at the ACLU of Missouri. So we are part of a national organization, ACLU, or the American Civil Liberties Union, and we are in every state in the country and in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
I believe we have 3 affiliates in California. So our job, our mission, is to defend the Constitution, and specifically the Bill of Rights and the first 10 amendments. So our work is to make sure that people, that the government keeps its word and doesn't do anything that affects people's rights.
What did you study?
I studied journalism,
Oh, nice.
periodismo,
Uh-huh.
and history.
Mm-hmm.
And I was formerly a journalist, and my job here is to help tell the story of our organization, but also help inform people about their rights and the work that we do. So the work that the lawyers do, I help, even though I'm not a lawyer. So our website is www.aclu-mo.org, and we encourage, first of all, we encourage everybody to know their rights, and we have some materials on our site and also on our national site.
How can we help to know everybody knows their rights? Because it seems like people doesn't know their rights.
People don't, and often, many times what we see is that lawmakers don't know the Constitution or may not be as aware of things, and sometimes
Even the president.
yes. No, that's true. So our job is to defend the Constitution, and sometimes laws get passed, things happen that are unconstitutional, and so we come in with our lawyers, and we generally sue, but we also do some policy work, and we do work in the Missouri legislature to inform lawmakers about laws that may be unconstitutional. Some people might have good intentions in trying to pass a law, but don't realize the consequences or what might happen when they pass a certain kind of law. Some do, but not all.
Mm-hmm.
So our job is to help inform lawmakers and if things may be unconstitutional or violate people's rights, and also when those laws pass, our lawyers are there, and as you've seen with President Trump, that we have seen this administration in court and in the state, we will take people to court to do that. Okay, well, nationally, the one that's been in the news is what we've been calling the Muslim ban all along. But back in January, President Trump signed an executive order to limit immigration from 7 mostly majority Muslim countries, and we said it was a ban. At that time, he didn't, and we sued. There was an injunction. There's been 3 different versions of it, I believe, and we've been there the whole time, and we have, and the case is coming up short in the next few weeks, and our national lawyers are there, and he recently tweeted that it was indeed a ban, which is what we said it was all along, but they did not say, and a ban because of somebody's religion is unconstitutional. The Constitution guarantees freedom of religion. So that means if you're Catholic, if you're Protestant, if you're Muslim, if you're an atheist, even if you're a Satanist,
Yeah, you have the right to
you have
to
the
be.
right to practice whatever you want, however, and in almost cases, in whatever way you see fit as those religious practices. So it's unconstitutional and illegal to say somebody can't come in this country because of their religion, because this country was founded on freedom of religion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one example of a national case. Another local case that we had is we recently sued the city of Maplewood, which is in St. Louis County, and they have what they call a nuisance ordinance. They have several, but they have one nuisance ordinance in particular that says if a person calls the police for a domestic violence related issue 4 times in 180 days, the city reserves the right to revoke their occupancy permit. So this happened to a client of ours. She had called the police 4 times in that period. Her former boyfriend was very violent. He broke into her house one night while she was sleeping and punched her in the face. So the city has this law that we believe is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kicked her out. They kicked out her name is Rosetta Watson. They kicked out Ms. Watson, or they revoked her occupancy permit, and therefore her landlord she lost her lease and she had to leave that apartment. And so she got another place in the city, and her boyfriend came in and broke into her house, found her, stabbed her several times. She was so afraid because she had lost her home the last time.
Yeah, she was punished for something that she didn't do.
She was, and so she was so afraid because she lost her house the last time. She was so afraid to call the police that she drove herself to the hospital after being stabbed. And the police came to the hospital and saw her, eventually convinced her to press charges. Her former boyfriend was convicted. But any person who is in fear for their life shouldn't also be afraid of losing their home. And we see it as a constitutional issue because they haven't had the right to due process, which they haven't had the right to plead their case, if you will. And also, nuisance ordinances such as that tend to predominantly affect women of color, and actually domestic violence is one of the main contributing factors to women and children who are homeless. So that's some of the work that we do.
Dani, how can we know our rights?
So education is great. So you can look on our website, www.aclu-mo.org, for information on knowing your rights. You can look on the national ACLU website too as well. And I would recommend, especially with the current climate, that folks look at the Know Your Rights when it comes to interactions with police.
Mm-hmm.
What you can say and what you can't say, or what is legal, what is not legal, as well as knowing your rights as far as free speech for people like us who are involved in activism, or people who are just involved in activism on things that you can do that you're allowed to stand on a public sidewalk, you're allowed to stand on a street, but knowing your rights, especially if you go out to a protest or even dealing with law enforcement, I think is very important in these times. Also, for Latinos, knowing your rights when it comes to the immigration piece, and why we do a lot of the broader constitutional rights. There are lots of good immigration resources here in town, but just knowing, what kind of documents you need, what kind of documents you don't need, or when you need to be asked, because you don't actually have to, and many times you don't have to show your document, any kind of document.
And I'm glad that you mentioned it, because right now it's a law that they are trying to pass, that any police officer can be an immigration officer. Mm-hmm. And they have the rights to ask you those questions. Mm-hmm. What do you think about it?
About the immigration?
That immigration law, that any guy can stop you in the Metrolink and ask you for papers or things like that. I won't think so that it's gonna pass, but you never know at this point.
I mean, a lot of the work that we do, and ever since Michael Brown was killed in August of 2014, we've been working to try and, with the state legislators, to change the policing laws. And one of the things that we've been working on is ending racial profiling. A recent report, the Attorney General files a report every year, the Vehicle Stops Report, and it just came out last week here in Missouri. And I believe it's African Americans are 75% more likely to be stopped in the state than whites. And that number has gone down a little bit and come back up, but it's been high for 17 years. So one of the things that we've been looking at is stopping racial profiling, and it applies to Latinos too. And it's not to get too complicated, but the problem is that one of the problems is that we don't track what's happening. So, for instance, we only track vehicle stops if somebody gets pulled over. Well, a lot of times people's first interaction with police is on the street. Somebody stops you, an officer stops you walking by on the street. And that data, like it happened to Michael Brown, that data is not tracked. So we don't know who's being stopped for what and when. I mean, we think that's a problem. We also think there needs to be more training for police officers, and frankly that there needs to be accountability, that if certain departments are good, but there are certain departments that are not good, and that the ones that are not good be held to standards, and be face disciplinary measures if they still police in a way that is racially motivated. So I think for your question with ICE and immigrants, and should you be able to stop anybody, well, that sounds like racial profiling to me, right? You're just stopping somebody because you may think different. They look a certain way. Mm-hmm. That's right, that's different to you. And we don't think that's right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow, well, I'm glad that you guys exist. And hopefully you can win as many cases as possible. What do you think about the Constitution?
I mean, I think it's the beauty about America, right? I mean, I think that the beauty is that if you look at, our clients in the past and people who've changed America, a lot of them weren't trying to. Something happened to them. They filed a lawsuit and they changed things. I'm not saying that always has to be the case, but I think that in my opinion, everybody has a responsibility to try and make the world a better place. And sometimes we're put in positions where, there's some brave people like Ms. Watson who, she lost her home and it's taken her a while to get back on her feet. And she's doing this not for herself, because she doesn't want that to happen to anybody else. Mm-hmm. So the world changes when brave people decide that they want to see it changed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
I love it.